Okay, cool. I'm going to start. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mathematically Proving Your Stories Have No Bugs. I think I'm unmuted on the Discord. I'm just going to double check that, though. Yes, I am. Okay, good. This talk is about ruining perfectly good storytelling by adding maths. I say maths because I'm Australian. It's not math. You're wrong. Please follow me on Blue Sky. Thank you. I gave the whole spiel on the thing I did yesterday. I'm from Tasmania. It's a very long way away, and I work on a tool called Yarn Spinner, which is the thing we wrote when we were working Night in the Woods. So Scott Benson, who didn't really want to program, could program by writing narrative dialogue that kind of didn't look like a programming language. Yarn Spinner is a whole suite of narrative tools that have powered a lot of very interesting and successful games that we really like, including these ones that are out and about to come out, and a bunch of stuff that came out in the recent showcases. If you saw my talk yesterday, you've heard all this already. Yarn Spinner powers a lot of really cool indie games, ranging from really cool tiny things to really big things, and we love that about it. It's completely free and open source. Go check it out. This talk is not about Yarn Spinner, though. This talk is about something we're making just next. This is something that we consider to be part of the Yarn Spinner philosophy, well, one of them anyway. It's that computers should do more to make the boring parts of game development, or anything really, more bearable. This is not really a mission statement. This is just something that we think is very true. We feel it's really important that computers take away drudgery from our lives and not make the fun parts go away. So we really like building games that have lots of interesting and complex narratives, and I'm sure a lot of people here do as well. And that's a really important thing to do. And implicit in building games that follow this are two questions. So there's two really important things that we feel are important when you're building complicated narrative games. One of them is, how can we be sure that every part of the game, every line of dialogue, every piece of text you've written is reachable? And the other one is, how can we be sure that every quest or everything you want to do in the game or can do in the game has a valid path from start to completion? Not necessarily in one run, although that might be something you want, but in general, in concept, you want to make sure that everything you've created is somehow reachable in some way. Unreachable content in the capitalist hellscape we live in is wasted time and money, which is important if you're making a commercial game. Content isn't free, even if you're not making a commercial game. It takes time for you to build. It takes effort and energy and love that you put into it. It needs to be designed, implemented, then it needs to be tested, and then hopefully it's played. And if it's not playable, then what was the point? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people make little games themselves. I certainly do and never show anyone, but also you kind of want to make sure the thing you've made is complete on some level, so it makes sense no matter how you approach it. If something isn't completable or reachable, that is work done that a player will never get to experience. And that's sad. That really makes me sad. Unreachable content must be debugged. We want to fix this. This is a problem. So we're going to go through a way we think you could fix this. Here's the link that was up earlier. Hopefully most of you got it. I'm going to move quickly. It's in the Discord, so please go look in the Discord. It's in both spots in the Discord, it could be, if you need this. This is not a fun, interesting narrative experience. This is just a demo of a shell of a fun, interesting narrative experience that I'll be looking at the concept of as we go through the talk. So it looks kind of like this. It's a little demo game. It is a really simple little text adventure. We're going to meet the mayor, learn about the critical path, and so on and so on. And there's an evil prince involved. And we can pick up some quests that appear up on the top right-hand side of the screen about a dragon or something. The quest display updates as we go, and the variables down here update as we go, kind of showing what kind of information this game is tracking. The specifics of this are not super important, just the gist of it is important. So as long as you're happy with the fact that there's an evil prince, dragon, and some quests to do, that's really all you need to take away from this. So hopefully that kind of makes sense on multiple levels. Now, this game has an underlying quest structure, which you can see here in our tool Story Solver. This is something I'll come back to later. The grey boxes are the individual quests, and they're made up of quest nodes, which are like plot beasts or plot beats or tasks that you might be undertaking in the game, and they're all connected together with lines. Some of those lines have conditions on them, and that's the foundation of what we're talking about in this talk. So that's Story Solver. So hopefully this is kind of matching to what you just saw. This is the structure of that very simple game that you can play through on your devices. Cool. Okay. With all this in mind, we want to answer two specific questions about this specific game. Can everything be seen? So can we actually find every piece of content that's in there? And can it all be completed? So can we complete the quest to end the game, whatever path that may take? The traditional solution to this, if you make a game, is basically test, and keep testing until you've solved it and make sure everything works. And then you kind of have some sort of heuristic, or lots of spreadsheets usually, lots of Jira, Trello, boards of some kind that track what you're trying to do. To that end, we're going to play through the golden path of the game just to see how we might test this game the traditional way. So we enter the village, we see the mayor, we talk to the mayor, the mayor tells us that there's a problem in the village. The mayor tells us there's a dragon. We deal with that. We ask him again. We learn about the witch. In addition to the dragon, we go to the King's Road, find a woman on the road. She's running away from home. We tell her to return home. We go back to the town. We talk to her father. Her father is happy and tells us how to defeat the evil prince. We go back to the King's Road. We go to the forest. We find the witch. We slay the witch. We take the ancient blade. We eventually go back to the town. We up to the town yet? No, we're still in the forest. Oh, well. We go back to the town. We go to the Scholar's Tower. We find the blueprints for the magic armor. We learn we need mithril and cursed gold to make it. We go to the mountain. We find the miner. We talk to the miner. We get the mithril. We go back to the town. We talk to the blacksmith. We get the blacksmith to make the armor. Now we have the armor and the blade. Double checking the journal. We have everything we need at that point. It'll catch up eventually, trust me. And then we can go to the castle and attack and defeat the evil prince. Hooray. So here we are taking the mithril, going back to the King's Road. Now we're going back to the town square. And the mayor, go to the blacksmith. Now we're going to forge the armor. Great, fantastic. You've got the armor. Brilliant. You'll see these things are ticking off as we go. So it's satisfying the state that you need, and the quest log is updating as you go. This is nothing magical. This is how pretty much every video game works. And then at the end, we walk into the evil castle, we attack, we use the ancient blade, and we defeated it. Fantastic. Brilliant. That wasn't too bad. It took us about 40 seconds to play this very simple game. It's kind of fun, kind of funny, the first time. So if you've ever made a game, you kind of have to do that over and over again with your game, and most of our games are much more complicated than this silly thing. So the golden path in this game, in case you missed it, was, talk to the mayor, learn about the evil prince and so on, and then biffo at the end, congratulations, you've done it. Brilliant, wonderful. Feel free to play through the golden path if you want to see the golden path of this game. Basically, you did it. This is just one possible path through the game, and you can see how doing it over and over again would get very tedious. I'm already sick of it from rehearsing this talk. But we want to test the entire game. We need to make sure we can play all the pieces of it. There's a bunch of content you didn't even see. So if we cap it at something short, let's say we played 10 steps through this game. 10 paths is 31,809 possible unique paths through this tiny game. If we had one more step, let's make it 11. 11's a nice number. That's 94,044 paths. And to really finish this game, we're actually looking at more like 20, which is over 1.5 billion paths through this game. And this game is very simple, as you could see, which is just, makes my head hurt. So if we add another implicit question to our goal of making this thing more testable and more exploratory, how do we avoid burning out our QA staff? In a lot of cases, our QA staff is me, who also wrote the game, which I'm sure is a familiar experience. Brute force testing games are very possible, but I don't want to melt me into goo, and I don't want to melt QA staff into goo to make sure the game works. And doing it manually was not really any good. So an alternative solution is we simplify everything to make it easier to test. We reduce all the complexity, we take every piece, make all the little stories kind of independent nuggets of story, separate them, so we don't need to test the entire flow through a very complicated story, we just test tiny pieces. And unfortunately, this really impacts the stories we might want to tell. If you ever played a Ubisoft game, I absolutely love them, but they're all kind of structured in this way where they're all kind of simple silos of stories and they don't really interact or flow between each other in any way. That's just because they're too big to test like any reasonable way. It creates a world that feels kind of disconnected. They're fun, but the storytelling is not this complicated, nuanced, crafty, branching thing that people who love interactive fiction might be used to. You can really feel this in many games. The larger an area becomes, the less twisty the story starts becoming. And I'm sure you've all felt it in particularly AAA games these days. This also has another issue in that we move the handling of complexity from the testing to the writing. In the cases where the tester and the writer are the same person, you're just melting the same person. But in theory, it pushes the load off one team QA to another team narrative. Is this better? Unironically, I think it might actually be better because the overload is kind of easy to manage in an earlier stage of development, writing. But that doesn't mean it's good. It is better though. But then if we want to change something that impacts a previously tested session, the whole thing is kind of unraveled and you have to start again. Warning, regression. If anyone gets this reference, come and tell me later. Surprise, complexity is back. You never really left it. It just was moved where it was. So that was no good either. So we thought a bit more and figured out, what can we do? What are we meant to do? And, as with many things in our life, our solution is to make the computer do it. We love making the computer do it. We want to make it smart. We want to make the computer do it really well. And here's kind of a scale of sophistication you can apply here. We test everything manually or identify tests in specific paths, implement stochastic methods, or you solve for every possible combination in the universe. We prefer this one. I pointed to the bottom for the people on Discord. And a key realization we had at this point when we were thinking this through was that every dialogue tree is actually a logical equation. Every dialogue tree is also a system of constraints. And these things mean that every dialogue tree can be solved mathematically, which is very exciting because I love ruining things. And maths ruins everything. Enter solvers. What is a solver? So apologies if you're a computer scientist who knows what a solver is. I'm going to explain this now. Solver is a piece of software that can tell you if a series of constraints are valid and how they are valid. So let's have a look at how that works. We're going to walk through what a solver does to validate some very simple constraints, and then we'll look at how we can apply that to narrative. This is based on a paper and an algorithm called Davis, Putnam, Logeman, Loveland, and it was published in 1961. It's not new. It's not new at all. So we take the following Boolean expression, which is circle, or square, and triangle. Everyone's happy with those symbols? Yep. Great. So circle, or square, and triangle. And we're trying to find out here, is there some value for circle, square, and triangle such that these two sentences, circle, or square, and triangle, and not circle, are both true at the same time? It's going to be a very quick demo unless we added the not circle constraint, basically. That's why it's there. So we'll start by picking a variable to explore. We're going to start with circle. Love circles. We're going to explore the potential space. There are lots of ways to go. Well, there's two. That's lots. And there are many approaches to working out what should be the starting point. But for this sample, we're going to basically try setting things to true first and then false if that doesn't work and see what happens. So we'll say circle, true. What happens? Well, so far so good. We need to check it against our theorem, one of which is not blue circle. So, no. Let's try making it true. Is that still compatible with our theorems? Nope, because true is not true. I promise I'll get to the point in a minute if this is making your brain gloss over as it did to me when we first started looking at it. What about false? We look at false. Also no, because while not true equals not true, we also said one step up in the tree that blue circle must be true. This means that we've found a universe where blue circle can never be true, so that entire left-hand side of our tree is now useless. It's dead to us. It can never meet the requirements we've set, which are in the top left. But because it's a tree, we can just walk back up until we find a state that isn't dead and keep exploring from there. So this reduces the total amount of exploration we need to do when we find dead ends. We try something new. Let's explore setting blue circle to false down the right side there. At this point, we probably realize we can't solve this just with circle. We are going to have to investigate the potential values of the square and triangle. So this is why we needed the not circle and the set of theorems we were checking. Otherwise, we just said set blue circle to be true, to be done, and it's not great. With blue circle set to false and locked in as false, it's time to start exploring what happens with green square. What if it is true? So everyone's happy, blue circle is false, which satisfies the second thing, yep. What happens with green square? What if it is true? That actually works fine. It doesn't invalidate any theorems, so we can move on to looking at red triangle. So now we've satisfied two pieces of it. We've solved for the circle and the square in both places. Red triangle though, what if it is true? Hey, that works. We've found a potential world where everything has a value, pardon me, and those values don't invalidate the theorems in the top left. So the solver's found a universe where these constraints are satisfied, and at this point it would stop. Everyone's happy with this so far? Great. Okay. For completeness' sake, if we were to tell the solver, no, keep looking, this is what we would get. You would be told there's no other way to do it. So we've actually found the only correct universe for this very simple example. Final step is to bring this back to our world of story. Each of these abstract shapes can represent a fact in the game's world, and the longer sentences, the theorems, represent more complex statements that we can assert the truth value of. In this case, this was us asking the solver, hey, I want to make sure the befriend dragon path of the story works. So these all map to something from our story. So selecting the right approaches and how to determine what variables to experiment with, what starting conditions, etc., is the secret sauce between the various different solvers. This is very brute force heavy, and solvers are smarter than this. But failing any smarter approaches, this is basically what solvers will fall back on. It is proven it will eventually find the answer or tell you there isn't one. So we're going to move on and look at this in a little bit more detail with our narrative. But first, a lot of people ask us, is this AI? Lots of people. And the answer is an emphatic not really. This came out of an area of research that is in the domain of AI research, but it isn't what we're currently calling AI, which means it's not an LLM. So this is old proven technology. It was proven in 1971 by a guy called Cook. They were in use for 20 years before they were proven to be valid for all software problems. A useless computer science history fact is that the Boolean satisfiability theorem, which is what's going on here, was the first NP-complete proven theorem. They've recently picked up in use, but recently, in the last 30 years, because computers have gotten powerful enough to do this without having a computer that's the size of a building. So these are in use behind the scenes everywhere, from compilers to air traffic controls to all sorts of things. everywhere, constantly. Now, the second thing people ask us is, can ChatGPT do this? Or whatever your preferred automated lying plagiarism thing is. So let's take a quick look at that. You know, a solver will not lie to you. An LLM will lie to you. A solver does not need to be spoken to like it's an idiot. A solver can explain its results. It can tell you why it arrived at a certain conclusion and be correct about it. It can exhaustively explore a domain, again, without lying to you, but it cannot write a poem about onions. Very sad. We did plug this into a few different LLMs. We gave it the entire source code of the game, then asked it if we can reach the end. Its first answer was incomplete. It said you need the magic armor, and it skipped the fact that you need the ancient blade. We gave it the leading question of, what about the ancient blade? And it gave a flat-out wrong answer that you don't need the blade at all. It made something up. Finally, we asked it to give a different path through the story, and it entirely made up the notion that you can talk the evil prince into not being evil. Which is nice, narratively, maybe that's nice, but there's no diplomacy in this game. There's only violence. And this is just more proof that LLMs make stuff up all the time. So people have been trying to use LLMs for this. It sometimes gets it right, but it mostly gets it wrong. It's not worth playing with. So let's have a look at using these solvers for narrative in narrative games. First step is to convert it to a format that the computer can understand. And our preferred format is Yarn Spinner, but it theoretically works with any narrative scripting language that has defined parameters and variables. So let's say we have the following story. Been tasked with dealing with the dragon. I'll kill the dragon. We set the dragon killed to true. I'll seduce the dragon. We set dragon seduced to false, to true. You've dealt with the dragon by either killing or seducing the dragon. Great. You can visualize that as a nice graph. There's two paths through the story. We do call them dialogue trees for a reason, after all. And then there are four different worlds to consider. There's our story begins, where the dragon is neither seduced or killed, and killed. There is kill the dragon, where the dragon has been killed is true, and not seduced. There is we've seduced the dragon, where the dragon is true, seduced, and is not killed. And there's we've reached the end, which is we have seduced and not killed the dragon, or we have killed and not seduced the dragon. And then once we've done that, we need to set up the constraints for what we actually want to test. This is the part that can't be done automatically. You need to say what it is you care about when you're testing something. In this case, we want to be able to reach the last line of dialogue, which is we need that last statement to be true. So that's an end state for the game, must be true. We also want to say we can't both kill and seduce the dragon. In our game, it's not possible to seduce the dragon, then kill them. And it's definitely not possible to kill the dragon, then seduce them. That's a very different game. So in this case, seduced and killed must be false. Can't be both. And we want to also know under what circumstances can we kill the dragon. So we're looking for that as well. Finally, we then ask the solver, is this possible? At which point it determines if all these constraints are possible and figures it out for us. And it will also tell us how it is or isn't possible, which is very useful. This is arguably more important than whether it is possible. You sort of already know it's going to be possible if you've written a story, so you're unlikely to make something that's impossible. But how is super important for testing and exploration. This is where Story Solver, which is the thing we're currently working on, comes in. This is our take on using this technique for narrative. So this is this tool here, and if we zoom in on the Dragon Quest, theoretically my little video will zoom in, there we go. We see its structure. We can learn about the dragon, and then we either slay or befriend the dragon, and we can enter test mode, and we can say, we know about the dragon, and the dragon is dead. And when we do this, our journal updates. So here we're setting the parameters over here, and you'll see things are updating to say dragon is dead. And our journal updates. What's great about a solver, though, is that we can do it in reverse. I can tell the solver, I want the quest state to be dragon dead. And when I do this, the solver figures out, in order for that to happen, certain variables to me to be true and works backwards for us, which is very useful for getting interesting states from our game to find out how and why they got into that state. So this also applies to the critical path of a game. Remember, the quest depends on you completing several other quests. So if I go and tell the solver here that the evil prince has been defeated, then that results in us not only having completed that quest, but it will tick off a bunch of other quests that quest depended on. We befriended the dragon. We didn't do the missing air quest at all. We did slew the witch, and we crafted the magic armor. Then we attacked and defeated the evil prince. All from us just telling the system that we wanted to be at the end of the game. And it figured it out. So, kind of magic. Very useful. Now, Story Solver isn't the game itself. It's just a tool for designing the game's quest. But what we can do is we can actually ask Story Solver to download a copy of the game's state from any particular point, which basically generates a save file. And once that's downloaded, we can actually load that save file into the game itself. So you'll see here, I'm going to paste this save into the system. And then we're going to continue and see what state the game's in. We walk up to the mayor, and the mayor thanks us for defeating the evil prince, because we loaded a safe state where that was true. Everyone loves us. Fantastic. But of course, solvers can detect bugs and problems in our quest structure. When we tell it that we want to be at the end of the game, it found this state here. So, fiddle. Where we've befriended the dragon, slain the witch, and so on. But what if I want an end state where I've defeated the evil prince and slain the dragon instead of defending it? Well, it can do that, no problem. It finds a state where the prince is defeated and the dragon is dead, and I made the heir return to her family. Really useful for finding different paths through your game. But of course, that heir quest has two endings as well. In our little story, the heir can elope with her fiancé, and if we add that as a constraint in there as well, you'll see here, when we do that, we're just adding the constraints we need. There's no solution. There's no possible universe where you're at the end of this tiny game and the dragon is dead and the heir has eloped. In fact, if you try it in the game, you'll find yourself soft-locked and unable to proceed. We actually found this bug by using Story Solver on our demo game. It was not something we wrote in there deliberately, so we left it in. Very useful. Now, Story Solver, as I said, is not the game, and the quest graph isn't the same thing as our game source code. So what we do is we ask our tools to run over the game source code, and we check every quest step and task, asking, given the logic of the game source code, can every single step and task be completed? And effectively, this is Story Solver playing the entire game for us, and for every part of our story, it proves you can reach it and gives us a result at the end. And this takes about 26 seconds, thereabouts, which is very quick and much quicker than trying to do the 1.5 billion cycles that we discussed earlier. That would probably take the heat death of the universe for one person to do. But once it gets to the end, it reports that, yes, all quest nodes are reachable in this game. And we figured that out in 26 seconds, which is very impressive. Now, this approach has lots of strengths and some caveats. This is a great quote from like a computer science luminary that, beware of bugs in the above code. I have only proved it correct, not tried it. The real world is messy, and this only tests specific interactions and not that the code itself actually does what you promised that it would do. It's just testing what you're telling it. And this doesn't remove the need to test. What it does is help you target your very limited testing resources. It can tell you the paths necessary to see all content, for example, or the steps necessary to reach specific pieces of content. Each path and their constraints form the basis of your tests, and this is the first step in using these for some sort of test case generation, or at least a manual on how to test your game. And of course, you can use these to minimize testing overlap and make sure you're actually exploring all the possibilities in the stories. It also can't know about non-narrative changes to the game state. We are exploring uses for this technology for things like, fighting games and balancing the mechanics and stuff like that, because it can kind of work for anything. But right now we're focused on narrative because that's the thing we're most passionate about. But it's quite likely your game has elements that even the best written and most tested narrative flow can be broken or soft-locked by things that are not the responsibility of the narrative team, which means you'll still need to test these interactions. But it definitely can tell you that the world you promised would actually exist. But it can't know that the player did something that broke the story. You can't use this to learn, okay, to get into Act 3, we need the player to have the magic sword, because it can still tell you the constraints regardless. Which leads to my next and almost final point, assumption validation. When you're building something, you probably have a pretty good mental model of what it is you're trying to build and how it's meant to work. With technology like this, you can test these assumptions and verify them, which is really handy. And you can catch edge cases and trapdoors. Now, if you haven't finished Baldur's Gate 3, plug your ears, because this is a slight spoiler. Very tiny spoiler. One of the most impressive things about Baldur's Gate 3 is that there is this object that's very important to the game called the Orphic Hammer, and someone on the team, either through testing or really good planning, realized that the hammer can actually be thrown away, which cuts out a huge portion of the game. But they've actually got specific dialogue where one of the villains tells you off, "The hammer, you misplaced it, you fool," and a check for it. And you can find stuff like this using technology like this. It's very powerful. But you can also find narratively unsatisfying but valid events. So, for example, if you have a game, and I'm sure there's an indie game out here with a title like this, if you have a game called I, the player, never simultaneously have 50 gold and a sword, it would be weird if your game allowed you to have a sword and 50 gold at the same time. It's not an issue that prevents completion, and it's not really a bug, but it's something you can locate with tools like this. And of course, you can verify paths that you expect are the ones that exist. We found a bunch of bugs in our own testing with our tool when we started doing it like that. And of course, one of the most interesting uses of this is save game synthesis. As I showed you, we can ask Story Solver how it found an answer. And once we have that, we can generate a save for it. We saw this in action. It's really cool. But you can also give it a save and ask it to explore the implications of that save to find out how they got in that state, which is useful if there's something broken. And it can help you prune or save or grow your save game menagerie, which is very common when you ship a game that has lots of saves and lots of players. A great story from a friend of ours who's a video game journalist, dying breed, who's reviewing a narrative game, big narrative game. The game crashed and corrupted his save. So he emailed the studio and was like, hey, can you fix this for me? And they said, yes, no problem. The next morning, he found an email with a save. Turns out one of their QA people stayed up all night playing the game to the point that he had it with many of the same choices to send him this save. It's what people do. We call this assisted narrative building. Okay, you can't fuck it up at development time. So this is similar to code analysis tools for programming, which catch lots of errors very early. It's easy to add small inconsistencies when you're building stuff out. And having something you can go, hang on, that will never work, before the narrative team is even finished can save a lot of time. And this really helps you find bugs and quirks way earlier than you would otherwise. And we encountered this multiple times with the demo game. If you think this is cool, please talk to me. Here's some links. I think I have 4 minutes for questions if anyone wants to. Anyone have? Yeah, I saw you first. But the question is, does this work with the unspinner or other languages? Currently, it only works with the unspinner. There's no reason we can't make it work with any narrative tool that can define variables and state. So theoretically, we will be exploring that. Just right now, because we're the unspinner team, it works with the unspinner. We'd love to talk to you if you have other interests and systems that are not unspinner, because we want to make it work with all sorts of things. Yeah, I saw you next. Yeah. So, did you send to So everything you've seen is custom in ours. The very back end underneath everything is the Microsoft Z3 solver, which is an open source project from Microsoft. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that's I definitely think capturing the artifacts of like the constraints you're defining are really important. And as loath as I am to admit it, and a thing an LLM might be good at is looking at a large source code of a narrative game and defining the constraints for you then to use in a tool like this. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? It'll hit the first one. You can kind of define the way it finds things, but otherwise it'll just find the first one it finds. It'll give you the first valid state. You could continue as we saw with the circles and the squares. You could ask it to keep going, and it would find more if there were more. Anyone else? Yep. Not offered right now, but there is a form that if you're interested in it, you can put your email address in, or you can just email us at hello@yarnspinner.dev if you'd like to play with it. We're currently looking for guinea pigs who want to explore this with us. We would love to talk to you if you have a narrative game. It will be easier for us if it already uses Yarn Spinner, but it's not a requirement. We'd happily talk to you anyway. We're very interested to know how and when this might be useful. So full disclosure, this is probably going to be something commercial. We target to the bigger studios, but if you're an indie or a small studio, we'll make it free or extremely cheap for you. So we're not sure where we're going yet. We're just exploring the space right now. Yarn Spinner is an open source project, so we prefer to keep things as freewheeling as possible. 2 minutes. Anyone else? Questions in the Discord? Yarn Spinner is a standalone. Yarn Spinner works with every game engine, every major game engine. Plugin for Unreal is planned very soon now. Have we considered implementing more temporal type tests? E.g., found a route where the prince is killed and later the dragon is befriended. Yes, we could do that. Absolutely. Yeah. It's work in progress. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on this tool. What would be useful for you for a tool like this? Yeah. So a lot of the questions that we saw. Currently, in the interface, it is not exposed, but yes. Anyone else got a question? I have like 1 minute. 46 seconds, according to my timer. Well, thank you very much. If you want to talk about this, please feel free to find me on the internet, add me on LinkedIn, whatever. Corner me in the corridor. Thank you so much.